What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Alright, so we are going to continue our coverage over the X-Men, but now it's time for us to jump into some, Uncanny X-Men once again. And we pick up with issues number 298, 299, and the big issue 300. Now, this is a three-part story arc where we are beginning to work our way up to fatal attractions when it comes to Uncanny X-Men. But we're also seeing some new things coming into the actual book. Like, for example, the return of Magneto is coming very soon. But on top of that, we're also beginning to see a new virus coming into the world of Marvel Comics that is going to target the mutant race and slowly kill them off if somebody is infected by this new kind of virus, better known as the legacy virus. Now, with all that being said, let's go ahead and dive into Uncanny X-Men issue number 298 to start off today's video as the first chapter. And so getting into today's video, we actually pick up with Charles Xavier in the Ready Room. Now, the Ready Room is actually a new concept in X-Men comics at this point. You see, for Charles Xavier, he is using Shi'ar technology, but also being able to gather information from different sources across the world to be ready for anything to come down the road. You see, for Charles Xavier, he is really concerned about the actual future for the mutant race. Because for Charles Xavier, thanks to the Executioner's song, where he learned about Cable, Strife, and also now Bishop, he's realizing that the future is very dark for the mutant race. But at the same time, you also have different groups popping up, different groups of evil mutants popping up left and right and causing more problems for the mutant race. But at the same time, for the humans, they're also making their own groups as well to hopefully kill off the mutant race. And so for Charles, it's just him wanting to be ready for anything to come down the road. Now, while you have Charles Xavier in the Ready Room, he is then confronted by Bishop. You see, for Bishop, he feels like that he does not fit in with the rest of the X-Men. And so he kind of feels like he needs to leave the X-Men. Now, the reason why Bishop feels that way is because really, for Bishop, it's all about the idea of how he handled things. You see, for Bishop, he's really more of, you know what, let's go ahead guns blazing. And I want to make sure I take those guys down and not really try to work with other people around him. For him, it's more of a direct approach. And for the X-Men, they're kind of like, dude, we don't work that way. And so for Bishop, he kind of feels like he does not fit in at all and he wants to leave the X-Men. But you have Charles say, no, you're not leaving. And really, I feel like with you being around, it's beginning to help us realize that we have to change to be ready for what's to come down the road. But now we have to jump over to a character called Sharon Freilander. Now, Sharon Freilander first appeared back in New Mutants issue number 19. Now, originally, she was a Caucasian woman who was then changed into a Native American. Now, I don't really want to sit down and try to explain how in the world she was changed into a Native American. Just know it happened. Either way, she used to work at Charles Xavier School as a nurse, but thanks to X-Men Inferno, when the school got blown up, she had to move on with her life. And she did. She found a different school to work at, which is called Our Mother of the Sacred Heart. Either way, she is a nurse there as well. But while she's working there, out of nowhere, she is attacked from behind, killed off just like that. And we never see her again. Now, I want to jump over to Bishop, Archangel, Jean Grey, and also Gambit. And the reason why, because you have those four characters in the Danger Room, but I really want to focus more on Bishop and Gambit. And the reason why, because for Bishop and Gambit, they don't get along. And really because where Bishop comes from, you see, in the far future, Bishop had learned that the X-Men were killed off thanks to a traitor on their own team. And he met the future version of Gambit. And so the Bishop, he believes the actual traitor is going to be Gambit. So even though he joined the X-Men and he's trying his best to get along with every single member of the X-Men, Not really when it comes to Gambit, because he believes that Gambit might sooner or later do something to the X-Men. But either way, you have Jean Grey say, you two need to learn how to work together. And that is why we are currently in the Danger Room. Now, before Sharon had officially died, she was able to call out to Charles Xavier to inform him what happened to her. And so when we jump over to Charles Xavier and also Storm, we see them currently meeting up with Detective Charlotte Jones. Now, Charlotte Jones was actually dating Archangel around his time in Marvel Comics. Either way, once you have Charles get the call from Sharon, he realized what happened to her and he goes over to call the X-Men. And let's not forget that Gambit, Archangel, Beast, and also Jean Grey were in the Danger Room. And so once they get the call from Charles Xavier, they're like, okay, you know what, guys? We got to go right now. Apparently, something big has happened, and Charles needs us right now in a hurry. But getting back over to our Mother of the Sacred Heart, we actually pick up with Tom Corsi. Now, Tom Corsi, just like Sharon, was a Caucasian character who was turned into a Native American, but he also worked at the same school that Sharon did. And so he is a bus driver, and when he pulls up to the school with a bus full of kids, he realized there is something wrong. But also Sharon is not outside to greet the kids. And so he realized something is about to happen. And so he begins to back up. And that is the moment the school blows up. And that is when we learn that basically Sharon was killed off by the Acolytes. Now, the Acolytes were a small group of characters who used to follow Magneto like he was their god, because they believed in what Magneto believed, that basically the human race is trying to kill off the mutant race, and mutants should rise up and get rid of the human race. And so they went ahead and attacked Sharon only because she was a human, but also because they're trying to find a certain mutant that's apparently at this school. Now, for Tom, he does try his best to protect the kids. And really, he is able to kill off one of the members of the Acolytes. But then they try to kill him. But at the very last second, the X-Men do arrive to save his life. Now, this leads into a small battle between the X-Men and also the Acolytes. Now, for the Acolytes, this is actually a new version of the group because most of the members of the original group had died back in X-Men issue 1 through 3. Now, really, let's go ahead and jump back to that story arc right there. And the reason why, because in that story arc, we saw Magneto officially go back into being a bad guy for the X-Men, but also he was kind of pushed into this role of leading a new agenda. The idea that mutants should rise up and humans should be killed off. Now, at the end of that story arc, Magneto was killed off by a character known as Fabian Cortez. Now, for Fabian, he used Magneto for martyr, to basically use Magneto as a symbol or a way to push his agenda to get other people involved, to say, hey, listen, they killed off Magneto, and that shows that humans are trying to slow down the mutant race. So let's rise up for Magneto and get rid of the human race. And so after that, you then have Fabian Cortez begin to, recruit new people into the Acolytes, but now he is the leader. He wanted that role so bad, he had to get rid of Magneto, really use Magneto to achieve that goal. Either way, we do learn that the new Acolytes are actually here for a young child. And the young child they are looking for is actually a mutant. Now, their main goal is to find the child, kidnap the child, and then raise the child with its own kind of people. And of course, I am talking about the mutant race. But the problem is, though, well, when they find the child, they realize the child has Down syndrome. Now, for the Acolytes, that's actually a problem. And the reason why, because for people who have Down syndrome, they get looked differently by the human race. But for the Acolytes, it's really more of like, hey, this person right here is already genetically wrong. Like, we can't do anything at all with this young child because of him having Down syndrome. And so they try to leave. Now, while they are trying to leave, you do have the X-Men continue to try to fight against them. But unfortunately, you do have the Acolytes being able to get away just this one time. But again, they came here for a child, but they realized that child who is a mutant, has Down syndrome, and for them, they can't raise a child like that. And really, the ending of this chapter is really important because you didn't have all these different news channels at the school to report what happened because the school was blown up, but there were 14 people inside the school, which means they are officially dead. And so this kind of scene right here is now being looked at as a mutant terrorist attack. And so you now have different politicians out there trying to push their agenda of the whole idea that mutants are a problem. And so for Charles Xavier, when he's watching the news, he kind of realized that, yes, that dark future for the mutant race is coming very soon, it seems like, because no matter what they do, things are only getting worse and worse because of evil mutants out there, making things hard for all mutants across the board. But now we have to jump into Uncanny X-Men issue number 299, where we actually pick up with Forge, but also pick up with Henry Gyrich. Now, these two characters, they are currently at what's left of Asteroid M. Now remember, Asteroid M used to be the base for Magneto, and it used to orbit around the Earth, but somehow, in some way, it was able to land safely back onto the Earth, and that should not be even possible. Now, you do have Forge and Henry get called into the actual Asteroid M base. When they get inside, they find the armor of Magneto, but no body of Magneto at all. But they also find the dead bodies of the previous Acolytes. And so it kind of shows that somebody was able to make sure that Asteroid M landed safely onto the Earth. But the problem is, now where is the body of Magneto? Because we were left to believe that he had died back in X-Men issue 1 through 3. But now we have to jump over to Charles Xavier and also Jean Grey. Now we do learn the two characters are currently at ABC News Studio. And the reason why, because Charles Xavier is about to go live on TV to do a debate with two other people, because Charles realized that the mutant race and the human race, their relation is beginning to, well, decay very fast. And so his main goal is to rebuild that relation between both races. Now, for me personally, I say humans and mutants have never truly been on the same page, but you do have some humans out there who do care for the mutant race, but not a lot. Now, for this debate, Charles will be joined by two other characters, Senator Kelly and also Grayson Creed. Now, Grayson Creed, he is the leader of the Friends of Humanity group, basically a hate group towards the mutant race. And that group right there will become very important in later events down the road when it comes to our coverage over the X-Men. Now, for Kelly, he's more of like, yes, mutants are a problem, but mutants still have rights. And so his main goal is to find a way to handle the mutant problem without actually killing them all off. Now, something else I need to say is that at this time, Marvel Comics, the world has no idea that Charles Xavier is a mutant. Only a select few people actually know that Charles has powers. To them, Charles is a human being who believes in the rights for the mutant race. But now we jump over to Archangel. Now for Archangel, we're seeing him at an orphanage checking in on the young boy who has Down syndrome from the last chapter. Now, you do have Archangel going out of his way to put the young boy in bed. And once he does that, he is then confronted by, well, a lady who works at the orphanage the young boy is at. And now, for the young lady, she tells Archangel that she feels really appreciated that he's around checking in on the young boy. Now, for Archangel, he's kind of like surprised that she's not scared of him. And she says, why should I be? You're an X-Men. I know that the X-Men are good people. Not all humans out there hate the mutant race. Not all humans out there are scared of the X-Men. Now, for Archangel, he kind of feels like she should be, but also because when she says she looks at the X-Men as angels watching over them, he says, I'm not an angel. I am more like an angel of death. But she says, are you truly a bad angel for the things you have done? Because look at you right now. You knew the young boy right here, the one with Down syndrome, is a mutant. And you could have told police that he was a mutant. And that secret right there could have got out to the public. And then that young boy would have to go through so many different things in his life because he is a mutant. But you and the X-Men held that secret. And now the young boy is able to live a more peaceful life without the idea of worrying that folks might come after him because he is a mutant. Now, I want to jump back over to the debate because you have Charles Xavier trying to win a debate with the idea of using his X-Men. You see, with the whole idea of the world saying that mutants are all bad, that mutants are evil, is Charles saying, well, look over here. You see, we have a group of mutants, the X-Men, who are going out of their way not to only protect mutants, but to also protect the human race. They have saved the world countless times. But then you have Graydon say, but weren't the X-Men responsible for the death of the wife of Senator Kelly? Now you have Kelly step in and say, yes, my wife died technically thanks to the X-Men, but at the same time, they were not fully responsible for her death. At the same time, understand what the X-Men were doing. Is Kelly showing again like, yes, he may have some hatred towards the mutant race and he feels like the mutant race should be properly handled, but at the same time, it's not him saying, let's go ahead and kill off all mutants because they had got my wife killed. No, it's him saying there are good mutants and there are evil mutants, and there's a difference. Like Charles is all down with the idea of protecting mutants. Graydon, he wants to kill off mutants. But Creed, he's right in the middle. And it's kind of like, can one of the other two guys pull Kelly into their actual side? Now, there is another group of characters we have to talk about, and that would be the Upstarts. Now, the Upstarts were a group of people who would play this sick game of killing off mutants. Now, the more powerful the mutant you kill off, the more points you receive. Now, if you have the most points, then you're the top dog in the actual organization. Now, we do learn that Fabian Cortez is in first place. And the reason why, because, well, Fabian killed off Magneto, and that gave him a lot of points. Now, the other members of this group is like Shinobi Shaw, the son to Sebastian Shaw, Game Master. You have Trevor Fitzroy, who is actually from the same future that Bishop is from. And you also have Graydon Creed. Now, we can say that Graydon is only part of this crew because he gets the chance to kill off mutants for the fun of it. But either way, the Upstarts are beginning to come back into the picture to most likely fight against the X-Men. Now, I want to jump back over to the actual debate going on between Kelly, Graydon, and also Charles Xavier, because you have the moderator bring up the fact that Charles Xavier almost died back in the Executioner song. As we all know, it was Strife who was pretending to be Cable who shot Charles Xavier with the techno-organic virus. Now, to the public, all they saw was a random man who pulled a gun out and shot Charles Xavier, and he had to go into recovery. Now, for the moderator, he is saying that, look at this video right here. You had somebody who disagreed with you when it came to the idea of mutant rights. Do you realize that you live in a world where you have a bunch of humans who believe the same way that one guy did who tried to kill you? When you're going to realize that technically Charles Xavier, you might have to die as a martyr to kind of push your agenda, the whole idea of humans and mutants living together in harmony. Now, for Charles Xavier, it's really more of like, yes, there was an attempt on my life by somebody who hated mutants. Now, this is Charles kind of just playing along with the moderator because he knows it was actually a mutant pretending to be another mutant. But for Charles, it's kind of like there are still people out there who still want to see mutants actually live alongside with the human race. And the thing is, I'm going to keep pushing my agenda until I actually die. Now, I want to jump over to Colossus. Here's the reason why. Because Colossus has gone through a lot in a very short period of time in our coverage over the X-Men. You see, for Colossus, he found out that his brother that he thought was dead was actually not dead, and he was able to reunite with his brother. Up until you had Mikkel, well, commit suicide. And then after that, Colossus found out that in Russia, they were basically watching every single mutant across the board, just in case they had to use those mutants for some special reason, like Illyana. You see, Illyana is a mutant, and she is the younger sister to Colossus. Now, for Illyana, she has also gone through a lot when it comes to X-Men comics. You see, she first appeared as a young girl, but then then she was taken away into limbo, where she was aged up into a teenager. By the time she came to Earth, she was like 13, 14, or 15. But thanks to X-Men Inferno, she was de-aged back down into a young girl again. But then Russia said, hey, we need your sister to use her powers to save the day. The problem was with her powers that they were no longer active because she was a young girl again. And so they had a machine to age her back up to a teenager to hopefully use her to hopefully, unlock her powers once again. Now, for Colossus and the X-Men, they were able to pull Ileana's machine before she was aged back up to a teenager. But then recently we find out that Ileana is sick, and we have no idea how sick she truly is. And the thing is, it could be the new virus that could possibly kill her off. Now, I want to jump back over to the debate going on because now you have Beast actually joining in. Now, for Beast, it's really more of him just poking fun at Graydon, because you have Graydon try to speak about different things about the mutant race, but you have Beast continue to pick on the man to the point where you have Beast just calling Graydon different names like racist or bigot. But also you have Beast kind of stick his tongue out at Graydon's show that Beast is having a fun time just making fun of Graydon on live television. While you have the debate going on, we jump over to the X-Men, who are a nearby bar right now watching the debate. Now, you do have Bishop get easily distracted. And the reason why, because he sees a waitress and he realizes that there's something very special about her. Maybe she could be a family member, like a great-grandmother or a grandmother or a cousin down the road. Who knows? Either way, there is some kind of connection between her and Bishop. Now, with that being said, you didn't have Storm give a toast. Now, really, it's not a toast. It's really more of like raising a glass to all the different people who had helped out the mutant race over the years and who are now technically dead. So, for example, Mimic, Thunderbird, Cypher, Cable, Warlock. Those are different characters who had helped out the mutant race over the years. Now, for the X-Men, they have no idea that technically Cable is alive again. But Storm continues on by saying there were humans out there who also supported the mutant race, like Mariko Yoshida, the ex-girlfriend to Wolverine, Sharon Freilander, who died in the last chapter. And really for Storm, she does not stop there, because she even says the bad mutants out there who had caused problems for us, they could have done good, but also they're gone as well, like the Hellions and also Magneto. But it's her saying, we're hoping that maybe down the road there is a bright future for all mutants. And so she raised her glass in the air to say, to the future. Now, the ending of this chapter is really important because you didn't have Charles Xavier and Senator Kelly continue to talk to one another after the debate had ended. Now, while they're talking, kind of shows that these two characters could possibly work together and to sit down one day and discuss how they truly feel about the mutant race, and possibly could be on the same side with one another. Now, you have Jean Grey realize that maybe Senator Kelly is not really a bad guy, but then somebody was able to enter her mind and tell her, like, yes, you're right. Senator Kelly is not a bad guy. Matter of fact, he could be a good guy. And so you didn't have Jean Grey realize that the assistant who's following Senator Kelly around could most likely be a mutant. And that is really important. Now, for Jean Grey, she also overheard Charles tell Kelly that he's going to France, and she has no idea why for. And then you have Cyclops appear. He said, listen, the reason why we're going to France is because we had found the base of the new Acolytes. Apparently, it's in France. And so the gold team and the blue team are going to work together, and we're going to fly over to France to find a base of the new Acolytes. And so as we dive into Uncanny X-Men issue number 300, we actually pick up with Nightcrawler. Now, this is not Nightcrawler rejoining the X-Men. It's really more of Nightcrawler just helping the X-Men out because their next mission is going to be in France. And for Nightcrawler, he's still the leader for Excalibur. And Excalibur is based out of Great Britain. And so he was nearby. Now, once you have Nightcrawler arrive, he sees Forge there. Now, the reason why Forge is there because, well, this area of France is being labeled as the dead zone, meaning that Cerebro is unable to detect any mutants at all in this dead zone area. Now, the reason why, because the Acolytes have put up some new tech to block out Cerebro. And so Forge came here to give the X-Men some upgrades for Cerebro to help them be able to locate the actual base of the Acolytes. Now, for Nightcrawler, he realized that Forge is trying to leave before the X-Men had arrived. And for Forge, he says, listen, I don't want to be here with the X-Men for one reason, because you guys live in an imaginary world, because you all believe in a world coming down the road where mutants and humans are going to be able to live together in peace. And for me, I'm going to tell you right now, it's not going to happen, because that's make-believe. This is the real world. We are mutants, they hate us, and they're always going to try to kill us. And so you have Forge leave just like that. Now, for the X-Men, they're on their way to meet up with Nightcrawler, but they had to make a quick stop to pick up Moira McTaggart at one of her estates. The problem is, though, when they do arrive at her estate, they don't find her. Matter of fact, they find the building on fire. Now, for Wolverine, he's able to realize that Moira McTaggart was never in the building, but most likely she was taken. Now, before you have the X-Men being able to do some detective work, that is when they are stopped by a mob of people who live in this area. And the last time the X-Men were there, they had caused a lot of damage to this area. And so for this mob of people, they're kind of like, hey, we don't want your kind here anymore. Like, leave right now, because you guys have caused a lot of problems for us in the past, and we hate you guys a lot. Now, for the X-Men, they hate the idea of seeing all this hatred pointed towards them. But for Charles Xavier, it's more of like, no, we have to understand what these people feel like, because we did cause a lot of problems in the past for them. But either way, let's go ahead and move on with our day. Now, we do get a small flashback between Charles Xavier and Moira McTaggart to kind of remind us that those two characters, they go way back with one another. But we also kind of pick up at the moment where you have Charles telling Moira McTaggart about his idea of the X-Men, how he already selected different people to form the first class. Now, we already know the first class was Cyclops, Jean Grey, Angel, Iceman, and Beast. But we also learned that he also was thinking about adding Storm, Nightcrawler, and Colossus to that first class. The problem was, though, they were international characters, so it was kind of hard to bring those three over into America to be part of the first class. And so now we're being told that Storm should have been there alongside with the other heroes at the very beginning. Same for Nightcrawler, same for Colossus, and possibly other people as well. But then we learned the actual flashback was being watched through a computer screen by the Acolytes. You see, the Acolytes were the ones who had kidnapped Moira McTaggart, and they had put Moira inside a machine so they were able to dig in her mind to hopefully learn more about Magneto. Now, we do see that Fabian Cortez, the guy who had killed off Magneto in the past, is still the leader of the new Acolytes. They have no idea that he was the one who had killed off Magneto. Now, for Fabian Cortez, he is constantly arguing with another character known as Amalia Voigt. Now, Amalia Voigt is going to be really important in later chapters down the road. And the reason why, because her close ties with Charles Xavier. They were very close once before in the long time past. Either way, for Amalia, she hates the idea that Moira McTaggart is even a prisoner. You see, because at this time in Marvel Comics, Moira McTaggart was just a regular human, not a mutant. And so for Amalia, it's kind of like, go ahead and kill her off because she is a human. Why do we have her around? But for Fabian, it's kind of like, no, I need her around so I am able to learn more about Magneto. Now, while you have the X-Men on their way to meet with Nightcrawler, you have Colossus call up Stevie Hunter. Now, Stevie Hunter was another teacher who used to work at the school of Charles Xavier. Really, she joined right after Kitty Pryde had joined the X-Men. Now, for Stevie, she stayed behind to watch over Ileana. And like we saw in the previous chapter, it does look like that Ileana might have some kind of sickness, that new kind of virus. And so you have Stevie telling Colossus that she's not getting better. Now you have Iceman trying to talk to Colossus to say he understands what he's going through. But for Colossus, no one truly understands what he is going through because this man had already lost 3 different family members, his parents and also his brother. And so now he might lose his sister as well. But either way, you do have the X-Men being able to meet up with Nightcrawler finally. But back inside the base of the Acolytes, we actually pick up with Fabian Cortez and also Amalia still having their argument, but you didn't have Moira McTaggart pull Fabian close to her and say, listen, we both know what happened to Magneto. You see, to the entire public, they believe that Magneto had died in a way of trying to inspire the mutant race to fight on against the human race. But in reality, he's going to force to die because of Fabian Cortez. And so for Moira, she said, how would your new acolytes feel if they find out that you had killed off their god, that you're the reason why Magneto is no longer around? Now, you do have Fabian and Amalia leave, but another acolyte, better known as Simon Hall, was nearby. And so once you have Fabian and Amalia leave, you have Moira McTaggart being able to talk to Simon and say, listen, you are following a false leader. He wants you to believe that you guys are trying to carry on Magneto's dream. But in reality, he's the reason why Magneto is no longer around. Now, for Simon, he really cannot believe what Moira McTaggart is saying because, one, she's a human, but two, because she's a prisoner. But now for Simon, that doubt has been planted inside his mind. He's now beginning to believe in the possibility that Fabian might be a false leader. But now we have to jump over to Archangel and Bishop. Now, these two characters, they're trying their best to figure out where is the actual base of the Acolytes. And you have Bishop see a castle. And so for Bishop, it's kind of like, I got a weird feeling that castle could most likely be the base of the Acolytes. And so you have Archangel and Bishop head over to that castle to kind of look around and see if the Acolytes are hiding inside. But getting back inside the actual castle, we do pick up with Fabian Cortez calling on the Game Master. Now, the Game Master is part of the Upstart program alongside with Fabian Cortez. Now, for the Game Master, he is a very powerful psychic, so you are easily able to contact him across the world. And so for Fabian, you do have him and also the Game Master get into a small argument. Now, their argument is not really important. And the reason why, because you have Fabian Cortez actually admit that he was the one who killed off Magneto. And so with him saying that, he had no idea that Simon was in the room. And so now Simon realized that he was following a false leader. Now you have Simon trying his best to get away, but when it comes to Fabian Cortez, he's able to give your powers an upgrade for a short moment of time. And so he kind of gave Simon powers too much juice to the point where you actually have Simon fly straight out the castle into a nearby area. But now Simon got away from Fabian for the time being. But now he knows the actual truth, that Fabian was the one who killed off Magneto. Now we jump over to the X-Men real briefly because you see the X-Men getting ready to actually go inside the castle. They truly believe that what Bishop said could be true, that this could be the actual base of the Acolytes. Now, for the X-Men, though, you have Charles say, listen, guys, I use Cerebro, and there is a mutant that's not in Cerebro's files. But yes, there are a bunch of mutants there. And so that tells the X-Men, like, hey, we need to go inside right now at this exact moment. Now, for Simon, we do see that he is alive, but he's also found by a young woman who is actually trying to help him out. And even though he looks at her as a regular human, he realized that not all humans are truly evil and deserve to die. But the problem is she is killed off from behind by other members of the Acolytes. So they're trying to kill him now after just killing her off. Now, luckily for Simon, he is then saved the very last second by the X-Men. Now, this battle is very short-lived when it comes to the X-Men arriving just in time to help out Simon, because they take down these members of the Acolytes so easily. But after doing that, you did have Charles Xavier being able to actually talk to Simon and say, listen, man, I think that you should try to help us out because, yes, what you are doing is completely wrong. Like, I understand you want to make the world a better place for mutants, but I believe that my dream is the better idea for the world. The idea of humans and mutants living together. And because you had a brief moment where you saw a human actually trying to help you out, I now know that you understand that all humans are truly evil. And so now Simon is going to help out the X-Men get inside the castle to take down the Acolytes. And this leads into a big battle between the X-Men and also the Acolytes. Now, I could really sit down and try to explain what's happening in every single battle here in this section, but I really want to focus more on Iceman. And the reason why, because you have Iceman show us that he had learned from what Mikkel had told him in an earlier story arc. You see, in an earlier story arc, Colossus' brother Mikkel told Iceman that he could be a powerful mutant if he had just tried to study more when it comes to his powers and not try to find love. It's him saying, like, Iceman, you can be one of the most powerful mutants in the world if you use your brains to learn more about your powers rather than trying to hit on girls. And so is Iceman right now showing us that he has learned some new moves thanks to Mikkel showing that he can do more when it comes to his ice abilities. Now, you do have the X-Men being able to take down the Acolytes, but then you have Cyclops realize that Bishop and Fabian Cortez are both missing. Now, for Charles, we get the idea right here that there's a long history between him and Amalia Voigt because he does go talk to her. And before she leaves, she does express that she's still mad at Charles Xavier, but she's also still mad about the idea that she lost her entire family thanks to humans. Now, she also tells us that she was also there with Charles alongside with Magneto in the early days of their lives. But then she teleports away. But now we have to jump over to Bishop fighting against Fabian Cortez. Now, Fabian tried to sneak away in the middle of the battle, and so you have Bishop say, you know what, there's no way I'm going to allow you to just sneak away. And so you have Bishop being able to catch up to Fabian Cortez, and you did have the two characters actually battle against one another. Now, while they're fighting against one another, it gets to the point where you have Fabian begin to overdrive the power of Bishop, because when it comes to Fabian, like I said earlier, he has the ability to overdrive your powers, to give you a power boost. But if he gives you too much, then your body might not be able to actually handle it. And so for Bishop, we do see him having a hard time handling what Fabian is doing to him. And so by the end of the battle, you do have the X-Men arrive. You have Simon being able to distract Fabian long enough to allow Wolverine to actually take out Fabian Cortez. Now, we're left to believe that Fabian is dead, but he is not. But you didn't have Simon say, listen, I am not going to join your cause at all. And so you have Simon leave, but you have the X-Men being able to take Fabian with them back to the X Mansion. Now, there is an epilogue for this actual story arc where the first part is that we do see that Fabian Cortez actually did survive Wolverine's attack and was being kept at a nearby hospital, but then being saved by Amalia. Now, You then have Fabian be contacted by the Game Master, where you have the Game Master tell Fabian that he had lost all his points when it comes to the Upstart organization. Now remember, he got a lot of points because he killed off Magneto, but now Fabian realized the only reason why he may have lost all his points is because Magneto is not dead. Magneto is alive and coming back very soon for round 2 with the X-Men. But to wrap up today's video, we do jump over to Charles Xavier and also Mormon Taggart. Now, you have these two characters looking over a sample of, well, the new virus that is going around killing off mutants left and right. Now, for Charles and also Mormon Taggart, they tell us that most likely if somebody is affected by this virus, they are going to be killed off. They are going to die. Now, for Charles, he knows that this virus may have came from no other than Strife. And so now he knows that Strife had released a virus into the mutant race population. And so sooner or later, all mutants are going to be affected by this actual virus. Now, Mormon Taggart says that she does remember a group of mutants back on her island that she was trying to help out. And she realized they all died from this actual virus. And so we jump over to Colossus, and let's not forget that Ileana is actually sick. And so we're left to believe in the possibility that she is going to die. And so this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.